Hello, hello. Welcome to the Local Prep Podcast. It's just me, the old local prepper. Sponsored by me, the local prepper. And of course, my Patreons, who just seem to be coming in at the cyclic rate. It's actually turned into work, and I kind of like it. Okay, so I basically want to talk about three or four things during this podcast. And we all know about Russia and the Ukraine, but no one's talking about the Minsk Protocol, which is that's a video within itself, or that's a podcast, or that's a subject within itself. But what I wanted to talk about was some of the things that are lining up. Well, there are some parallel situations that are happening in and around America as well as overseas that we need to be very aware of. Now, the first thing is, Russia and China, they're buddies. They're buddies. And we're going to talk about them a little bit later with how they have some of their economies set up to support each other. But uh, if you guys didn't know this, China has asked Russia not to invade Ukraine or take any military action until after the Olympics. Now, the Olympics end technically on February 20th. So you have, I don't know, 9 or 10 days left until that happens. Does it mean World War III? No, probably not for a while. But we do have U.S. forces in the area and a substantial amount of them. Let's not even talk about the ground forces. We basically have two fleets of U.S. forces along with a multinational coalition of other NATO forces that are out there patrolling in the Black Sea that are making the Russians very, very edgy, very aware that we do not like what they are doing. So you're looking at a possible triggering event there that may or may not happen. And honestly, this is bad news. This is really, really bad news. And if you had to have a short term prep date, I would say the 21st. I would say you need to have something in place by the 21st of February. But I think for the U.S., we maybe need to do something a little bit different. But let me cover that here in another segment here. The other thing that we need to think about too is that currently Russia is conducting, I'm going to throw my quote fingers up, exercises in Belarus, which is right next to the Ukraine. There's a substantial military force, Russian military force, in and around Belarus, which borders Ukraine, which would basically give Russia, if they were to attack from that position, the ability to penetrate the northern end of Ukraine and kind of like a pincer movement. And that exercise is going from the 10th, which is tomorrow, to the 20th. Isn't that ironic? Please don't attack until after the Olympics has closed out, until after the 20th. Okay. So those are things to think about. There's no definitive yes they'll do at the end, but militarily, yeah, they could be signaling to us that these are the kind of things that they might want to try. I'm going to move my mic a little closer to my mouth because I just noticed that I may have been a little bit faint. Also, I'm still using the PS4 mic. My good mic is at the other property, and it is what it is. Some of the key things that we need to think about when we talk about Russia and Ukraine and this whole partnership that they have is that we often hear about specifically the Americans, and concessions. And concessions only work if a company is part of the SWIFT program. Now, the SWIFT program, if you didn't know what that is, it's like it's a series of banks that are all put together. Some are based here, some are based there. But it's how let's say that Russia wants to buy corn and they have to pay America for that corn. Well, what they'll do is they'll use the SWIFT program to push real money over to the U.S. And in turn, that's how they pay them. It's almost like It's like any app where you push a couple of buttons and your money moves over. It's the same exact thing, but it's on a national scale. It's the top tier stuff, guys. No, you can't use your ATM card in the SWIFT program. It doesn't work that way. You have to be a member, and membership has its privileges. So, what's basically happened over the last years, in 2007, they started the program. Russia and China started to create their own SWIFT program. Now, what they called their SWIFT program was SPFS. It stands for System for Transfer of Financial Messages. And what it basically is it's a straight up portal from China to Russia and back and forth, and anybody else who's on the program. Now, what's scary is that there's about 35 different countries that are part of the SPFS program. India, and there's some more that I'm not going to list off here because obviously I'd be wasting your time. The important thing to glean from this statement is that the United States likes to use access to the SWIFT program as a concession to make other countries do what they want to do. Well, with Russia and China being friends and 35 other nations that are part of the SWIFT or the SPFS program, when America goes, oh, concessions, you will feel the concessions, not so much anymore. All they're really doing is strengthening the SPFS program. And every time they say concessions to Russia or China, China and Russia just giggle at them. All the sneaky stuff really happened America went off the gold standard in the 70s. It actually made gold illegal for some years to own personally. And while everybody was sleeping around the 2007 time frame, 2004 actually, Russia and China started buying up all the gold, holding physical gold. You see the commercials all the time on the TV, and yeah, it's a real thing. So the right now China is holds the most gold, like physical gold, in the world. They're basically have 368 tons of gold that they're using to back their currency, as well as the SFPS or SPFS system, I believe I said. Now, the Russian Federation, or Russia, has 331 tons of gold. Right behind them, Australia, 327, but the old United States only has 190 tons. That's interesting. So, all these really weird countries have more gold. And it's kind of weird. Uzbekistan has 100 tons of gold. Mexico, Indonesia, they're in the hundreds range. South Africa, Peru, Mali. I mean, and then obviously it gets lower and lower and lower. But the two kings of gold are China and Russia. Now, simply stated, if we want to play the concessions game with the Russians, they already know we've lost. The problem is that American citizens don't know that we've lost, and we really need to pull our heads out of our proverbial butts so that, yeah, we can stop this. And we can stop just playing around with this whole concession game. It doesn't work on them anymore. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about during this podcast is the trucker convoy. And I'm not talking about the one in Canada. The one in Canada has been extremely successful. And, you know, thank God that the Canadian government just isn't as good as the American government at creating hysteria over nothing. So if you haven't heard, there's going to be a truckers convoy here in America. It's going to be going the first week of March. And they're going to take their trucks and they're going to meet up and they're going to create a convoy and they're going to drive over to the old Washington, D.C., 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and they're going to park their trucks. Now, how long will it last? No one knows. Will it be peaceful? Most definitely. Will the government definitely try to make it more than it really is? Yeah, because they're scared, and they should be. The drivers protesting the vaccine, these drivers are protesting the vaccine mandates. That they've already been portrayed by the liberal media as right-wing zealots and science deniers, which is only one notch above climate deniers. There was a Facebook group that was organized for the U.S. Convoy that built up 130,000 members and they just basically got tossed off social media. And yeah, they'll do anything to silence the people that they don't want to speak up, that they don't follow their agenda. Now, they could, if pushed, call for a sick out of America's vital truckers. Whatever supply chain problems we have would pale in comparison before the catastrophe that would unfold if tens of thousands of drivers simply walked off the job for a day or two. Imagine what would happen to transportation costs and inflation. The convoy protests would come at an awkward time. The public has had it with the government and their draconian, if not largely ineffective, measures to combat that thing that we can't talk about. And They're emboldened by a growing body of evidence indicating that the restrictions and rules by our government, by both President Trump, were a mistake. You know, people are also tired of being told not to question the authorities, quote fingers. They're fed up with officials who say immodestly that they represent science, even as their pronouncements turn out to be worthless. And Truckers were driven to protest by new mandates from the government that anyone driving a rig across the U.S. Canada border must be vaccinated or quarantined as a condition of being allowed to enter their country, which basically puts them out of work for 14 days, which basically puts them out of work. And just like that, truck drivers went from being essential workers, highly lauded for risking their personal health, to deliver goods, to lock down communities, to being officially classified as a non essential functionary. Um, they felt jilted by an ungrateful populace. Now, why am I telling you all this? It's actually pretty simple. This was the reason for all of the videos, not Russia, not inflation, blah blah. It's all linked, but the reality is that this is going to affect us more than a war with Russia. The lifeblood of the American supply line, that stuff you get from Walmart, the way things get to Food Lion, the way the gas gets to your tank is through truckers. It always has been. It will likely always be that way. Regardless of what the left wants to do with trains, trains just don't go to gas stations. Thus, they're irrelevant. Now, if these truckers, and they're going to do it, decide to stop driving, yeah, and they're going to do it. For how long? We don't know. Hopefully, just as long as they need to, because they're going to need our support too. Um, the stores are going to be empty. Gas, it won't be found. That's how all that stuff moves. That's how all of that stuff, that's how the economy moves. And then the people who have all these things, all these stores that have stocked up. And if you think that the big box stores do not have warehouses full of food in anticipation of this, you would be completely wrong. You think inflation's bad now? Wait till the trucks stop rolling. It'll take about 3 days until all hell breaks loose. So I can only ask you to be prepared, to think about what's going to happen when you can't get gas for your car. How are you going to fix that problem? What's going to happen? What are you going to do when there's no food on your shelf? You have to fix that problem. You have about a month to do it. It's not impossible. And that kind of leads me to the Patreon guys. You know, we have had an influx, and yeah, this is shameless self promotion. We have had an influx this month of massive proportions. And when I say massive, uh, 6 more people than we had last week. But for me, that's good because that means that the word is getting out. Now, what we have focused the Patreon on is making sure that our members have information that other people won't have rapidly. They get it first. Anything that you see come out of my TikTok, on my YouTube, it's anywhere from 3 days to a week old. And if you're like, okay, that's great, that's whatever. But you know what? In this day of rapid information, the biggest complaint that I see is that people don't they don't feel like they're getting the information that they need to make decisions. Well, I can't spend all my time making videos for people that are not important to me, and my Patreons are important to me. Okay, so join the Patreons. There's going to be a link inside inside the description of this. This will make its way out to YouTube, and there will also be a link in YouTube to get into the Patreon. If you don't have the cash, get into the Discord. I always provide a Discord link as well, and maybe we can do some conversations there that will help you out. All right, so the last thing I want to talk about is truthsocial.com. Old Donald Trump is going to be kicking out his new social media platform. Well, originally it was scheduled to be the 21st, which people kind of thought was ironic because that's the day that Russia might attack, according to the Chinese anyway. But after further investigation, the CEO has already told us all that, if we've been paying attention anyway. He's told us that no, it won't be until the end of the month, if not the beginning of March, until it actually rolls out. If you haven't signed up for it, look for truthsocial.com. You'll go. It'll take you to a very simple website where you put some information in, and then when they go live, they'll hit you with a an email that'll basically tell you, hey, you can get it here. Now I know there's an app for it on iPhone already, but there's not one for Android that I've seen, and I don't know why, because that's pretty stupid. But in the end, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens on that particular social media platform. I would love to see it destroy Facebook, and frankly, Facebook isn't doing too great right now, and good, good. All right, guys. Until the next time, stay safe. Have a great day, and I'll see you when I see you, unless you're in my Patreon. Have a great day. Bye bye.